Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short. And it is, of course, getting Goosebumps. Latter end of season 3. Latter end of this show, this talk through run, really. We're up to the 15th episode of season 3 and the 59th episode overall. It is Awesome Ants. And as is the current theme with season 3, if you're thinking, I don't remember that as a Goosebumps book, it's probably because you've never read the short stories that appear in the books, Tales to Give You Goosebumps, or Still More Tales to Give You Goosebumps. This is the 6th short story that appears in Still More Tales to Give You Goosebumps, which has been the theme of season 3.
Yeah, you just start to get the sense that the show is winding down in terms of its ideas and books that it has to pull from. Like, it's pulling from all these short stories and stuff. I guess it's already hit all the main hitters, so now it's kind of just doing random ones here and there. You can kind of tell through some of these episodes.
Oh, you can indeed. And this is a good example of one of those. Directed by Don McCutcheon, making his directorial debut for this show. He would direct 3 episodes in total. This one, one more from this season and one more from season 4. And this is written by Neil Shusterman, another name that isn't that regular for this show. To be truth be told, watching it, I didn't notice any really differences in the writing or the directorial style. It felt very much like a Goosebumps episode.
Yeah, I didn't really notice much difference either.
Indeed. The cast is fairly small. We have Michael Yarmush as Dave Warren, Mafo Cole as Ben, Jonathan Welch as Mr. Lance, Catherine Disher as Mrs. Warren, and Michelle Mallon as Andrea Warren. A couple of minor little tidbit facts I found for this one. The comic book that Dave is reading in this episode actually appeared in another episode, Attack of the Mutant.
One of your favorite episodes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't have never known it unless I read it. I thought this was cute more than anything else, but the naming of the ice cream parlor, which is called Aunt Deb's Ice Cream, is actually a tribute to the Goosebumps longtime producer, Deborah Forte.
Oh, nice.
And just because I thought, wow, this is weird, because I never really watched the show, but you've heard of it. You know the PBS show Arthur?
Yeah,
of course you do.
Yeah, I did read this trivia as well. Go for it, though.
Yeah, Michael Yarmush, who plays Dave, the main character in this episode, he's the voice of Arthur. And once I read it and I heard it, I was like, of course he fucking is.
Yeah, it's interesting that one. Quite another big child star of the time.
Absolutely. Okay, so this episode it ain't nothing special, folks. It's not particularly a long one. It's a one-parter. Well, I guess we'll get to our final thoughts at the end, but for now, we'll dive in with a very rare opening shot, as we don't start outside a house. We don't hear a kid's voiceover. No, instead, we focus outside an ice cream shop. And I was like, whoa, that's different. You always notice it. Now this far into it, you notice a different opening.
Yeah, something fresh and different. You'll take it at this point.
Absolutely. And then we go inside to see an ice cream server, crushing an ant with his thumb in front of the customers. So yeah, awesome. 2 kids. This is Dave and Ben making their orders. And, it's one of those wacky kid orders where it's just sickeningly gross. But Dave describes it as them living on the edge. It's that kind of episode.
Radical, dude.
Yep. They sit and eat their ice creams. And then we see ants crawling in the ice cream and all over the kids' food. And naturally, they react accordingly. And then we kind of cut to this wide shot of the ice cream parlor, and you've got waves of ants crawling over the walls. But look, guys, it's Goosebumps. It is horrendously bad CGI.
Hey, what's your problem?
Hey, look at all those ants. That's disgusting.
Yeah, for those big hordes of ants, the CGI is not very good, but I did actually appreciate that when they do close-ups of the ants throughout the episodes, they do look actually like real ones. So at least they put the effort in there for that.
And at the very end, they will switch to practical effects as well. But this CGI, and what really made me laugh is the fact that the ants are like grouped together in like waves. And like, there's no stray ants around. They're just moving in these waves across this wall. It doesn't look good, but it's Goosebumps. You kind of just go, okay, then.
Yep.
Anyway, apparently it takes the kids pointing out that ants are crawling on the server for him to realize his arm is covered in ants. That made me laugh. It was like his arm is covered in ants, and the kid's like, oh, you got ants. And then he's like, oh my God, you didn't feel that?
I thought like their reaction was obviously quite appropriate though, because they comment on that it's obviously really like disgusting for one thing, and I just thought for sure that place is so getting shut down, man.
Oh, it is, absolutely. Anyway, everyone runs outside, and when he gets outside, Dave is then attacked by a giant ant, which is where we get our fade away, fade to black thing as this big ant lands on him. But it turns out just to be a model that's on an arriving exterminator's vehicle, one that he hasn't pinned down, because when he picks it up, he just puts it back in the front, like it's not like it's just sits in the front normally.
I want to stick that down, man.
Yeah, yes. And this is Mr. Lance. He's pest control. And Dave does rightfully point out, like, you got here really quickly because, like, it is a bit suspicious. But Mr. Lance just blows it off, suggesting his office is just down the street. And I'm like, dude, that is not an explanation. Who called you? This is immediately after.
I wonder, like, in the episode, did they explain how all the ants got in the ice cream store in that way? Is that actually explained? I'm not even sure if it is, to be honest.
No, but I don't think, oh God, without spoiling anything, everything that happens in this episode is pointless. There's nothing, by the end of it, none of it, and that's not me being mean, that's the angle it's going to take, meaning anything that happens doesn't matter.
Yeah, don't think too hard about it, basically.
Basically, yes. Mr. Lanston takes them both hostage, and literally drags them inside the ice cream shop to show them where the ants are. And I wrote hostage because he's literally, they're like, I'm not going in. And he's like, yeah, you are, and grabs them and pulls them in. So, okay. Of course, he didn't have to look far as they're all over the shop. He then talks about how great ants are before uncovering the nest, removing the queen, and says apparently if you kill the queen, it destroys the nest. He then squashes the queen in his hand, which results in like a gore effect, green goop, a lot of it as well, which I did like. I was like, okay, that's a cool touch. And obviously the kids are grossed out by this.
If you eliminate the
Queen, destroy the nest.
problem solved.
Insects get quite a rough ride in Goosebumps, wouldn't you say? There's quite a few episodes based on insects and how disgusting they are and how someone could have like a fascination with them, but then they ultimately like are basically evil in some way. Yeah.
We have spoken, obviously, more often focused on worms because they appear a lot, and R.L. Stein's writing of insects. I think sometimes it's just him going to a really, really low bar where kids are naturally grossed out by insects.
Yeah, no, I agree. That must be what he's thinking.
Yeah. Anyway, Ben leaves and Dave continues to talk to Mr. Lance, who then gives him a leaflet called Awesome Ants. Now, this, I had to freeze this over and over again because I could not work out what he gave him. I was like, is it a comic book? Is it a book? What is it? I froze the screen over and over again and I still couldn't work it out. Eventually, thankfully, the episode would go on to explain it. But they do an angle where they freeze on it, like they show you this leaflet that it turns out to be. And I just presumed I'm supposed to know what that is off the cuff, but it's like 2 seconds and it cuts away. Drove me nuts because I'm like, I've got to write fucking notes about this. Can you at least make it a bit easier?
That's fair.
But yeah, so basically it's advertising a product that you can send away for. And Dave figures, hey, this will be a good science project for school. So there you go. This is our next stage. Sometime later, Dave is at home having breakfast with his mother as his sister Andrea leaves. Dave then gets his Awesome Ants delivery, which are 2 boxes, and one of them happens to be massive. Apparently, he was expecting an ant habitat, which is what he gets, and it just happens to be a really big one. They end up putting it around the back of his house. And this is where it's weird. You get this shot, a rare sort of shots where we're seeing backyards of a house, including a street. How British did that street look?
I didn't actually even notice, but I guess it must have looked British then if you're saying it did.
It really did, yeah.
Did it really?
Yeah, so they put this habitat out in the back garden, and Dave and Ben look things over, and they've got a big jar of star ants and a very big instruction manual. There's some sort of jokes about the instruction manual, which, yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Ben then notices a jar of food pellets, and the instructions are quite clear: 1 food pellet per day. They then get things started by adding the ants to the habitat. Simple enough. Later, Dave is showing Andrew the habitat as Ben comes along, and Dave then throws in a single pellet. But Ben doesn't think it's enough food, so digs up, can you believe it, digs up a bloody worm and drops it inside. And I was like, fucking worms! I have to
2
count
for 1,
how many
man.
episodes.
2 for 1.
Yeah. They then both watch as the worm basically disappears when the ants go after it. So it's designed to look like the ants eat it really quickly, but the effect is basically it just fading away into nothing.
I thought it looked okay.
Yeah.
It was effective enough for what they're trying to demonstrate.
Yeah, at first I was confused because I was like, wait, what are they implying? And he implying like the ants sort of sucked it into the soil, but then after I realized it's just supposed to be super fast eating.
Yeah, like they ate so fast, yeah.
How about some Captain Crawl for breakfast?
No way, did you see that?
Hey, I told you they were hungry.
I guess you were right. I was probably starving them to death.
Bigger and Ben was right, though. Dave decides to start feeding the ant different foods as part of his experiment/report. He then gets some hot dogs, and for some reason they go into real detail about why it's okay to feed hot dogs, which is basically the hot dogs in the fridge are going out of date and they're not going to eat them anyway. I was like, I don't need that detail. Just fucking put the hot dogs in there.
I didn't want you thinking they were just wasting food mindlessly. That's what it was.
True. So the ants devour them instantly too. That night, Dave, in reading the instruction manual, finds a section that warns against overfeeding as it could lead to rapid growth. And of course, we all kind of knew it was going here, but there we get confirmation. But this is Goosebumps, and this is one of those with a twist that you're unlikely to be able to guess at all. It reminds me of a very early season Welcome to Camp Nightmare. That level of you could never get it.
If you could call this before it's revealed, man, you must think like M. Night Shyamalan or something.
Yes, absolutely. As he looks at the habitat from his window, something comes up the stairs into his room. It is the frightening sight of his mother with a hot baking tray and freshly baked cookies. It's one of those. As Dave goes to take one, though, he sees ants are crawling all over him. And he's basically just got ants on the brain. There's nothing going on. But we do focus on the habitat again to see what looks like a particularly large ant, a close-up of a bigger looking one. And as you said, these are the practical effects that look pretty good, even shrouded in darkness. I liked it. The next day, Dave's mother is freaking out as the kitchen is now crawling with ants. Dave, though, is impressed as his mother attempts to kill them with a broom, and Andrea declares she's moving in with the neighbors. That's kind of her role here, just to pipe up and say the odd little line about having a bratty younger brother who's messing with them.
Yeah.
Outside, Dave finds the habitat open, so gets a cinder block to weight the hatch down, which was a big step forward. Yeah. At school, he's delivering his ant report as Mr. Lance seemingly just wanders in. And after class, he grabs Dave in the hallway and accuses him of faking his video of the larger ants. So Mr. Lance, you're kind of thinking Mr. Lance is obviously going to be heavily involved in this and all of that. As I already said, folks, don't worry too much about it. It ain't going to count for shit at the end. Arriving back home, Dave discovers the hatch is open again and the cinder block is broken in half. And there also seems to be bones of some sort of animal inside. Going inside where his mother's cooking, he asks what they're having for dinner and she says turkey. And that scene just ends. So I guess it's implied that the ants went into the kitchen, took the turkey back to the habitat, and that's the bones?
Oh no.
That's why you have to assume, but we haven't really seen them do that up to this point. They just disintegrated things on the spot. Like they carried it back and then ate it. I
Yep.
mean, that's interesting for one. But two, also I thought the abruptness of the scene, like ending at the moment, was kind of funny because they don't explain what happened after, like when the mother discovered the turkey was missing.
Yeah.
What did they have for dinner? What did they have for dinner, Carl? What did they have for dinner? They don't
Couldn't have
explain.
hot dogs, could they? They would have thrown them out.
There you go. She's probably gonna be like, "I'll get those hot dogs out." Oh dear.
You could almost see that sort of scene being written and filmed, but then them going, we've got to cut it for time.
Yeah, I mean, they just cut out the whole mother freaking out. Where's the turkey gone? And like, oh no, they had to order pizza or something. That's it.
Yeah, because we immediately cut from that tonight, where Dave is padlocking the hatch before he calls the Awesome Ants helpline. He explains his problem and gets berated by the person on the other end of the line for overfeeding them. While this is happening, we see outside something is trying to break out of the hatch, and the person on the other end of the line then warns him to get out of there and just hangs up. So you're like, okay, ramping up, I guess. Dave is then startled by a large ant on the bookcase above him. He falls backwards on the floor as it advances towards him. Needing to defend himself, he picks up a tennis racket and squashes it with a rare thing I will praise here, a really nice goopy sound effect.
I've got to do something. There's no way you can hurt me. I'm twice as big as him. There's no way you can hurt me. I'm twice as big as him.
However, he then hears noises coming from the wall and discovers a massive hole. Weirdly, that is actually really creepy. Like, there's a really creepy shot, the idea of these big ants crawling in your walls. You know, you see monster movies, you kind of get this good vibe from it.
For sure.
He shouts for his mother and sister, but doesn't hear a response. He then runs outside, and the streets seem to be completely deserted. Not knowing where to go, freaking out about the ants, he goes to Mr. Lance's office. Inside, he finds something more akin to a laboratory. It's a bit mad scientist looking. And again, you kind of feel like this is where we're heading. We're going to find out. I'll tell you what I presumed. Mr. Lance was the owner of Awesome Ants, and his admiration and love of ants, particularly with his speech in the ice cream parlor, had him experimenting on them, and he was creating bigger ants.
Yeah, I thought they were going to go down the route of he had obviously created these ants, but maybe he himself had, like, an ant had somehow taken over his body, and he was basically an ant himself.
Yep.
Somehow, you know.
Yeah, we're both wrong.
Yeah.
He is pursued by what appears to be a giant ant that comes in the door, tries to get in the door behind him. And everywhere he turns in this warehouse, there are giant ants attempting to break in. One finally gets him behind him, though, and picks Dave up in its pinches before taking him off somewhere. And this is where, at the start of this video, I praised the practical effect of it. I've seen movies do this style of effect, and it looks good. It looks good. It looks fine.
Yeah, I mean, I always appreciate the effort for such these short children's TV episodes to create like a real practical effect. And the giant ant, like you said, I think looked pretty good for what the show is. You know, at the end of the day, yeah, not too bad.
Agreed. But we are running out of time, so we must get to the resolution of this episode. As Dave now wakes up in bed at home, as his mother comes in telling him to get up for school. Okay, so you're confused, people, and you're thinking, well, all right, did he dream it? Did it happen? What's going on? All be revealed step by step. Dave, taking it all in, believes it to have been a bad dream. And this seems to be confirmed when he looks around his room, sees the tennis racket on the wall, looking totally fine. The ant habitat outside is completely gone. And even the wall that had the hole is just fine. So everything screams dream. But we know it's Goosebumps, so we know something's going on. And he sits down for breakfast, pours himself some cereal, but ant pellets come pouring out. Was this the point where you got it? Because it was for me. I was like, yep, got it.
Well, this is like one of those episodes where I've definitely seen it before, but don't remember it well enough to remember how it plays out. But it was at this point I did actually remember where it was going, so I did know the twist was coming at that point. But obviously for you, someone that probably hasn't watched it before in a long time, you didn't see it coming. But yeah,
Cool. Andrew then tells him not to be a pig, and his mother agrees, telling him to put some food back. He then gets up, looks in the fridge, and finds jars of blue pellets. And at this stage, one of the things I thought initially was bad, but actually I think ends up being good, is that he takes all this in his stride. He's not like freaking out, going, what's going on? Which, if that happened, considering what's about to follow, would have been really, really dumb. But because I didn't quite know what was going to follow, I was like, man, he's taking this too well. Why isn't he a bit freaked out about it? But there is a good reason for that. Because because we hear an alarm from outside. Andrew and his mother then kick in the gear. Andrew declaring that she'll get a shovel and that Dave should grab a bucket, which he does. Because what's going on outside, the residents are all fighting over piles of blue pellets that have basically been dropped on the street. Okay. As Dave looks on, he sees the skyline, which shows that they are in a human habitat being watched by ants. And there it is.
I know what you're thinking.
Mr. Lance!
So it's the other way around. But if you're like, wait, what was the episode then? Here we go. Because along comes Mr. Lance, who now just kind of looks like a normal dude, a teacher and so on. And Dave and him talk, revealing that the entire episode was just a dream, and this has been his normal life. It's his normal life. And that's how the episode ends. And it's a lot to unpack, because like I said, it makes the entire episode pointless. There's no point watching it because the ending undoes it all and says none of it mattered, this is it. But there's also no way to ever work out of this twist. We've already said that, and here's the thing. I like the ending to this episode, but I can't praise it because we were critical of Welcome to Camp Nightmare for the same reason. Is it a good twist if there's absolutely nothing that signposts it along the way? There is nothing. You could also say, as dreams go, this is so elaborate, so over the top as a dream goes, thinking about the stages we go through, that doesn't really work either. I don't know. What do you think?
I think actually I really like it.
Okay.
I don't know if I was just in the correct mood for it, but I do agree that like it seems a bit iffy to not criticize it for something we criticize a previous episode for doing the same thing, where the twist is so out there. Yeah, like you said, you just couldn't possibly comprehend that that's where it would go. But I think it's like still really interesting the way it plays out. Maybe it wouldn't make as much sense in hindsight. I haven't gone back and watched the episode with the knowledge that this is the twist, because as I was watching it, I kind of forgot that wasn't what the twist was. So maybe a lot of things wouldn't make sense going through it. But I think like it is just such a crazy twist. I almost like it because it's so crazy. Even though the Camp Nightmare one didn't make sense and stuff, it's still like there's something about it that's like I can see what they were going for there. Maybe with like a longer run somewhere in the book, I know it's a short one, but maybe they could have fleshed certain things out more. But I actually think on the whole, the episode, I actually really liked it.
I think it's a decent episode overall. I am a fan of it for the major reason is it does feel suitably Goosebumps. The ending has that cheesy, dark, twisted mindset that we often found in the earlier seasons. It's not played for laughs. We don't end on a joke. You end up on the fact that these people, all of these people, it's not specific to our main character either. Their fate is this. This has been their life, and that is that. And that's cool. I'm always going to support that kind of ending.
I think that's maybe what it was. Is it kind of felt like more of a throwback episode to the style and just the act, just everything about it kind of like felt more like season 1, 2-ish. So it kind of was refreshing to get back to that. Whereas some of the episodes in the later seasons just don't really have that earlier episode vibe. So I kind of like that. I just thought like, for a short episode that's aimed at kids, it's got that fun B horror vibe to it, which is, I always kind of praise the episodes of Goosebumps that have that. So yeah, I think this kind of falls into that category really nicely. So I think it's actually pretty good on the whole, especially because like it's sort of episode with title alone, when you see that, you maybe go into it thinking this is gonna like be terrible just by that itself. But Yeah, I thought it was pretty decent.
What really enhances it, folks, is that season 3 has been incredibly miss for the most part. There have not been many hits. And what's going to follow this episode is a run of extremely, in my opinion, poor episodes. So this now stands out purely because it's at least good compared to what we've got overall. Would take this enjoyment more than a lot of the other ones, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just going in with low expectations because of what we had so far in this season, and like you said, what's to come. So I think this stands out as probably a pretty underrated episode on the whole.
Well said. That is awesome, Ants. Got any thoughts on it? You know what to do? Let us know in the comments.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?